Estelle Getty tells fans things that the makers of Golden Girls hid from them. Her real name was Estelle Schur, and she was born in New York City on July 25, 1923. Getty was raised in a modest home on Manhattan's Lower East Side by Polish Jewish immigrants. His family values culture, family, and strength. She fell in love with playing when she was young and saw how lively and exciting New York's theater scene was. It would take her many years of hard work, though, before she became famous. As a young adult, she had to balance her love of performing with the duties of marriage and motherhood. She also had to deal with the problems that came with working in an entertainment business that didn't always value older women or unusual talents. Essie Getty, whose real name is Ida Gettelman, stayed with her folks on the Lower East Side after she graduated from Seward Park High School in New York City. Although she had big hopes of becoming a famous actress, her early hopes were met with doubt, especially from her father, who didn't think a job in show business would be possible. Her family was a working-class Jewish immigrant, and they taught her traditional values that put stability and safety above taking artistic risks. Her Polish-born father, Charles G. Thielman, a glass installer, was afraid that his daughter would constantly be turned down and have trouble making ends meet in a job that was so competitive and unsure. Even though her family didn't support her playing career, Estelle's desire to do it didn't change. Getty got a job as a secretary, which was a realistic job with set hours and a steady paycheck, so she could support herself while still following her dreams. It was important to her that this job gave her enough freedom to go to acting classes and workshops in the afternoons and evenings. Getty made it a habit to balance her work life with her artistic goals. During the day, she wrote reports or filed paperwork, but she never lost sight of the stage lights she hoped would one day shine on her. She was desperate to break into the tough New York theater world, so she often snuck in auditions after work or on the weekends. Getty slowly built a modest record in the New York theater scene in the 1950s, 1960s, and 1970s. She started to be in a lot of small shows and was often cast in roles that let her comedic timing and expressive face shine. Even though these roles made her get better at what she did, they were rarely well known or paid well. She also did her job as a wife and mother by raising her two kids, Carl and Barry, with her husband, Arthur Gettelman. They lived in Queens, and Estelle often took long trips to Manhattan for work and interviews, which took a lot of time. It was hard to balance being a housewife, making money, and wanting to be an actor all at the same time. Later, she talked about how tired she was from getting the kids to school, going to work, making dinner, and still making it to a rehearsal or show in the evening. Even though she was tired and had failures, Getty kept going because she loved acting and was sure that one day she would get her big break. In 1982, when she was almost 60 years old, she finally got that big break. By that time, many artists have given up or retired when she got the part of Mrs. Beckhoff in Harvey Festein's Torch Song Trilogy. Her life changed in a big way. The part was written by Fierstein with Getty in mind after he saw her in a smaller play. I was amazed at how well she could mix kindness, sarcasm, and emotional depth. The play Torch Song Trilogy was a big deal because it dealt with gay people, family, and respect. Getty got a lot of praise for her role as the main character's strict but ultimately loving mother. She showed how a mother and her gay son feel deeply about each other and how generational differences can be hard. She was nominated for a Grammy Disc Award and praised by critics for her nuanced performance. She saw this as one of the most affirming times in her long, hard-fought career. Within the next 4 years, Getty played Mrs. Beckhoff in both Broadway and off-Broadway shows, becoming more well-known in the theater world. A group of producers named Paul Younger-Witt, Tony Thomas, and Susan Harris saw this act and wanted to hire her for a new NBC sitcom called The Golden Girls. The producers originally planned for Sophia Petrillo to be a minor character, but Getty's audition was so good that they decided to make the part bigger and cast her as the show's main character. When Getty started shooting The Golden Girls in 1985, she was given the role of Sophia Petrillo, Dorothy's sassy, sharp-tongued Sicilian mother. Getty went through a big change to make her look like a woman in her 80s when she was actually only in her early 60s. She wore heavy stage makeup, prosthetics, and big eyeglasses to make herself look older, and she wore a white wig that made her look unique. What a strange coincidence. Getty was younger than B. Arthur, who played her daughter Dorothy. Still, Getty gave the role his all, saying both funny things and deep things with equal flair. One of the most loved parts of the show was how she played Sophia. People were drawn to her unique mix of toughness and softness underneath. The Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Supporting Actress in a Comedy Series was given to her in 1988, which is one of the highest awards in television. Getty's emotional and triumphant acceptance of the award was a moment that showed decades of hard work, persistence, and finally success. The fact that she became famous so late in life inspired many fans and aspiring artists that it's never too late to follow your dreams. From 1985 to 1992, the Golden Girls ran for 7 successful seasons and earned both critical praise and a strong fan base. It is very rare for a TV show to constantly rank in the top 10 of the Nielsen ratings for all 7 seasons. The show had a big effect on culture because it dealt with important topics like death, getting older, sexuality, and female friendship with humor and style. But when Beatrice Arthur quit the show to try her hand at other artistic projects, the Golden Girls came to an end. In the same year, Getty and her co-stars Rue M. Lanahan and Betty White moved on to a new show called The Golden Palace. The spin-off kept some of the original show's spirit, but it wasn't as popular as the original, so it was canceled after 1 season. Getty kept working steadily, though, and in the 1990s he made guest turns on a number of popular TV shows. She played memorable parts on Empty Nest and Nurses, 2 shows that took place in the same world as the Golden Girls. She also had comedic or emotional roles in Blossom, Touched by an Angel, Mad About You, and The Nanny, where she often played characters like Betty White. Sophia in spirit and tone, Getty had a lot of important roles in movies in addition to her TV work. Before she was on The Golden Girls, she had small parts in movies like Tootsie and Mask, where she worked with big names in Hollywood like Dustin Hoffman and Cher. In 1992, she played one of her most famous parts in the movie Stop or My Mom Will Shoot, which starred Sylvester Stallone. While the movie wasn't well received by critics, Getty's performance was praised for its comedic timing and likability, and it made her even more of a pop culture star. Getty had a lot going on, but she still found time to think about her amazing life. When she was at the height of her TV fame in 1988, she wrote her autobiography with writer Steve Delson and called it If I Knew Then, What I Know Now, So What? In the book, she was honest about how hard it was for her to balance family and work life and how hard it is to get older in a field that is all about young people. Her autobiography was both funny and sad, showing the person behind the witty Sophia. It gave hope to people who were feeling down or ignored in their own lives. In 1993, Getty also put out an exercise film made just for older people. Because of her part as Sophia and her own experiences with getting older, she wanted to help older people stay healthy, active, and confident. The movie had both gentle exercises and her trademark humor, which made it easy for her target audience to understand and fun to watch. Millions of people loved Estelle Getty as the sassy and sharp-tongued Sophia Petrillo on The Golden Girls. In interviews and behind-the-scenes chats, she once talked about the less-known facts of working on one of TV's most famous sitcoms. Millions of people around the world laughed and felt happy because of the show, but Estelle later said that not everything behind the scenes was as perfect as it seemed on TV. Her revelations put light on both the hard work and the very human things that went into making the hit show. One of the biggest surprises Getty gave was how hard it was for her to play Sophia, even though she was the youngest of the 4 main actors. People thought she was the oldest, but Getty was more than a year younger than B. Arthur, who played her daughter Dorothy. Getty had to spend hours every day in the makeup chair to play a Sicilian grandmother who was in her 80s. This included complicated prosthetics, wigs, and a lot of makeup that made her look much older than she really was. Later, Getty admitted that the process of changing was hard, especially for someone who was afraid of small spaces, and that the wigs sometimes gave her headaches. Still, she kept going because she loved the character and was thankful to have gotten a big break late in life. Estelle talked about how working on the series affected her emotionally as well as her physical health. She had terrible stage fright and performance nervousness, especially in the beginning of the season. While her co-stars had a lot of experience in TV, Getty had mostly worked in theater and hadn't done much work in front of a camera. She said that her nerves would get the best of her during tapings and cause her to forget lines or speak shakily. The directors and other actors in the show were helpful, but she felt a lot of pressure to match the comedic timing and polish of veterans like Betty White and B. Arthur. Crew members say that her anxiety was so bad that she had panic attacks on set sometimes. To help her relax, her changing room had to be set up with soft lighting and lavender, scented candles. Getty also gave hints that there were problems between people working together behind the scenes, which was something that the producers tried to keep from the public. Even though the actors made it look like they were sisters on TV, Estelle said that the relationships between the women were not always easy. Some people, like B. Arthur, were known to be private and distant, and Getty often felt scared around her. At the same time, Betty White's happy, outgoing nature and B's dry, sarcastic humor sometimes didn't get along. Even though they were polite, Getty said in interviews that the four actors' relationship wasn't always as warm as fans thought. There were times when things got heated on set, but everyone knew how important it was to stay professional and give the fans a good show. Another truth from behind the scenes that Getty shared was about how the show dealt with social problems. People liked how the Golden Girls talked about issues like LGBTQ+ rights, getting older, and illness. But Getty said that some of the show's most progressive moments were met with pushback from network execs at first. When scripts were about AIDS, same-sex relationships, or caring for the elderly, they sometimes had to be changed several times to make sponsors and censors happy. Estelle had been an activist and supporter of LGBTQ+ rights all her life, and her son was out as gay. She was very proud of these events and pushed for them to be treated with honesty and heart. She once said that she had to fight to keep some lines in a script that were about AIDS awareness. At the time, those lines were used to support voices that were often shut down in popular media. One of the most heartbreaking things Estelle Getty said about herself after she died was that she started having memory problems while the show was still shooting. Getty showed early signs of dementia, but it wasn't recognized for years. She often felt overwhelmed by the number of lines she had to remember every week. To keep this from the people watching and the people making the movie, she would write her lines on furniture or props on set. Even though they didn't agree with each other, Arthur had a lot of respect for Estelle. He was said to help her practice her lines before tapings, and stage hands would sneakily help her during scenes. Because producers knew how important Estelle was to the show's heart, they decided to help her privately instead of telling everyone about her illness. After the show finished, Getty talked more and more about how her experience was two-sided. Thanks for the one of a kind part that made her famous around the world, but also sad about how it had hurt her physically and emotionally. Someone once told her that the real Sophia was often scared, worried, and having a hard time keeping up, even though everyone else thought Sophia was funny and smart. Even with all of this, Estelle Getty will always be remembered as a television pioneer. Fans gained a greater appreciation for her strength, talent, and heart when she was willing to talk openly about the harsh realities of working in Hollywood. In The Golden Girls, Estelle Getty played the complex and caring Sophia Petrillo. She was loved for this part. Getty died early in the morning on July 22, 2008, at her home in Los Angeles. She died at the age of 84 from symptoms from Lewy body dementia, a neurological disease that gets worse over time and eventually makes people unable to do things. This type of dementia is one of the most common after Alzheimer's. It is marked by abnormal protein deposits in the brain that cause serious memory loss, trouble moving, and changes in behavior. Getty's family said in a statement that she had been fighting this disease for years, and that by the end of her life, it had taken away many of her memories and her ability to talk to people. After she died, Getty was buried at Hollywood Forever Cemetery, which is one of the most famous cemeteries in Los Angeles and is where many famous people from the film industry are buried. The headstone at her grave site says "with love and laughter," which is a fitting tribute to a woman who made people all over the world laugh. The grave is in a quiet, well-kept area of the historic grounds. There is a Star of David above the writing, which represents her Jewish background and faith, which were very important to who she was. To Polish Jewish immigrants in New York City, Getty was born Estelle Schur. She was proud of her roots and carried that sense of cultural identity with her throughout her life and work. Not only did her fans and close friends and family mourn her death, but so did her co-stars on The Golden Girls, Arthur Betty White and Rue M. Lanahan, with whom she had great friendships after working together for 7 seasons. Her off-screen too. When all 3 actresses heard that Getty had died, they were heartbroken. They said in interviews and public comments that it was hard to lose a coworker and friend who had brought so much life and energy to their days on set. Arthur in particular talked about how painful it had been to see Estelle's condition get worse. He remembered that by the end of Getty's illness, Estelle could no longer hold a conversation or even walk. You may recognize her old co-stars. The lively woman, who used to make jokes with perfect timing and warmth, had become ill, and her illness slowly cut her off from the people and things she loved. In fact, it was said that Estelle Getty started to have the first signs of memory loss while shooting The Golden Girls from 1985 to 1992. Even though Getty had a great and long, running stage career before her big break on TV, she had been in over 30 theater productions. She started having trouble remembering her lines, which became more noticeable as the show went on. At first, these mistakes were thought to be normal signs of getting older or the stress of working on a demanding network comedy. But as time went on and her memory problems got worse, directors had to change things and put cue cards all over the set for her to use. Even with this help, Getty's performance was still very moving and believable, which shows how strong she is as an actor, even as problems get worse. Along with lose-a-buddy dementia, Getty also had a number of other health problems in her later years. She had osteoporosis, a disease that weakens bones and can cause a lot of pain and broken bones. Some of her symptoms, like twitches and stiffness, were also thought to be similar to those of Parkinson's disease. However, the original diagnosis of Parkinson's was changed after more tests by medical professionals. In the end, doctors said she had dementia with Lewy bodies, which is a diagnosis that can be hard to confirm because it shares symptoms with both Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's disease. In her later years, Estelle Getty was not in the public eye as much as she had been in the past. She stopped acting and now lived alone in Los Angeles with the help of her family and a group of aides. She was no longer well known, but the impact she left behind was strong. Millions of people all over the world still loved her work, especially her part as Sophia Petrio, a character who was funny, brave, and smart, just like Estelle. People will always admire and love her for the love and laughter she brought to the world and the courage she showed in fighting a cancer that wouldn't go away.